Welcome to Weekly Grooves. My name is Tim Houlihan.
And I'm Kurt Nelson. Each week, Weekly Grooves takes on a current topic, bringing a behavioral lens to that subject and talking through some of the fun and relevant and maybe irreverent implications and insights that we can discern.
We are behavioral science nerds who can spend hours dissecting a topic and trying to understand the behavioral science behind it.
But we're not going to spend hours on this one, are we, Tim?
No, not on this podcast. Weekly Grooves is our short podcast. If you want to listen to us talk for hours, you need to listen to Behavioral Grooves, where we interview researchers and practitioners of behavioral science looking for how we can apply those insights into work and life. That's the long podcast.
Woo, I love talking about this stuff, but I wasn't sure if I was prepped for hours and hours and hours of conversation on it.
Okay, so that does beg the question, what are we going to discuss in this week's Groove?
Well, we talked about the Iowa caucuses last week, so why not just continue on that roll and talk about the Iowa caucuses?
Really? What? I mean, can't we come up with something new? We talked about the front runner effect last week, and we still aren't even confident who the front runner is.
Yeah, well, we're not going to talk about the front runner event. This is going to be something new. We're going to take a fun twist on this. So if our listeners have been paying attention to the news that's going on in America this week, they might have heard about the debacle of the Iowa caucus results, how the Iowa Democratic Party had used a new app to help streamline the caucus results, but that somehow that failed and the results were not available and still were not fully available for days and days afterwards.
Dude, I thought that we talked about behavioral science issues. This sounds like a technology discussion.
You are correct, Tim. So here's the twist. With the delay, there was a plethora of online conspiracy theories around why that delay was happening. Twitter, Reddit, and other social media sites were filled with conspiracy theories that the Democratic Party didn't like the results that they were seeing, so they were changing them. That the Russians or the Chinese had hacked the app and were messing with us. That the Republicans had hacked the app and were trying to rig the election. That there were rumors that Hillary Clinton had helped build the app and was getting it, using it to get back at Bernie Sanders. And of course, my favorite conspiracy theory involved that the Illuminati are taking control of our election.
I think that's it. Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories and the behavioral science behind it, right?
That's the idea. So let's groove on the science behind conspiracy theories. And is there anything that we can do to combat them?
Yeah, good. Okay. So what can behavioral science tell us about conspiracy theories?
So let's start with a definition of conspiracy theory, right?
Good.
So Goetzel talked about conspiracy theories as the explanations for important events that involve secret plots by powerful and malevolent groups. So let's just go look at some of the big conspiracy theories throughout time, right? JFK assassination. There was this evil thing that it wasn't a lone operator, that it was the Russians or Cuba or even, Lyndon B. Johnson and his people that went and killed JFK. And there was more people in there, right? The Obama birther movement. Getting, that, hey, he isn't an American and he had been born in Africa and it was this big conspiracy to get him in there. 9/11 inside job, right? That, hey, the government actually put explosives up in the Twin Towers and then flew planes into them and blew them up.
Well, speaking of planes, how about chemtrails? This idea that there is this powerful stuff in the chemtrails and the trails that come from jets that is influencing and controlling us.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you can go on and on, right? The fake moon landing, the earth is flat, Holocaust never happened.
Oh, God,
The Illuminati rule the world, or lizard people are running the world. That's an actual conspiracy theory that is out there, that there are reptilians ruling the world. So these conspiracy theories happen, and they all revolve around secret plots by powerful people for evil purposes. So
why do they happen? Why do we come to them?
And this is where behavioral science comes in. So if you take a big picture, right, and you just look at this from that perspective, humans are reason-seeking machines. We are built to ask why before we even fully know the what happened. So with that, when something happens, some major event, and it's ambiguous, we're trying to fill in the things, and oftentimes then, we fill it in because we need to seek out an understanding of our environment, right? We have this epistemic kind of element. We have this need to feel safe and in control. And we also want to maintain a positive image of ourselves and of the social groups that we belong to. Right. So we place these things on it because, we're pattern-seeking people, right?
Yeah.
And so
with the Iowa caucuses, we could just, you talked about three really basic things. We want to understand our environment, right? This is an epistemic approach. So in explaining what happened, right, we're going to say it's going to be easy for people to look at the mucked up results with the Iowa caucuses and say, oh, the way that we explain the environment is that there was something governing this. There was some malevolent hand behind this, and that then the second part, the existential part being, this idea of being safe or in control of our environment. Well, this is clearly putting us out of safety. This is throwing us off. So it must be a malevolent, there must be a malevolent involvement. And then the social side, the third part is maintaining this positive image of ourselves and our social group. Then we're going to have an in-group, out-group thing, right? We're going to say that, oh my gosh, the Democrats, weren't, the people who were actually running it weren't to blame, but there must be some outside force that's trying to get in and hurt us, right?
Well, and particularly on that last piece, if you are depending upon where your candidate ended up those results, right? So you get into this component. If your candidate is in front, well, then there's no conspiracy theory. If your candidate doesn't perform like they should have, like they were expected to perform, or that you wanted them to perform at, well, then there has to be a reason. It wasn't because the candidate and all the work that you did as a supporter of that candidate was wrong and bad and didn't work. It was that there were this outside controlling forces in there. So I think that's really interesting, right? It goes back to Annie Duke and resulting and various different things. We try to, look at the result and then figure out, the process, and we're not very good at that. And so we can put in these conspiracy theories around that.
Well, we also know, though, that there is a personality. There's some personality traits, right, that are connected, right?
Exactly. So,
or that are at least more likely to give themselves to conspiracy theories, right?
Right. So Lanchian talked about in a study from 2017, said that personality traits such as openness to experience, distrust, low agreeability, and Machiavellism are associated with conspiracy beliefs, right? So when you think about that, it's that, these personalities that have this greater need for security, that already have this sense of distrust, that are kind of self-focused, are more likely to fall prey to conspiracy theories.
Sounds like a definition of Gen X.
Hey, now come on, I'm a Gen Xer. That's not how I feel or think. Well, maybe it is. Anyway, but the big piece here that I want to make sure that we cover is that it's not. This can happen to all of us, right? And there's been research about that. Karen Douglas and Robbie Sutton did a study about Princess Diana death. I'm not going to get into it, but basically, giving students, a couple things, and all of a sudden, just by presenting conspiracy theories, people were, more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. So actually hearing them lends you to then mistrust the actual facts of things. So you're getting into that.
Yeah, let me just give you a quick conspiracy theory test. Let me just.
Okay.
This gets back to Eric Oliver, who was interviewed by Paul Rand on Big Brains. I think.
Big Brains, great podcast.
Great podcast. Super shout out to him. But Eric Oliver's at the University of Chicago, and he said, so think about this. Which would be worse for you, to spend some time in the pajamas that are completely laundered and clean that were once worn by Charles Manson, or to pick a nickel up off the ground and put it in your mouth?
All right, so let me get this straight. I'm wearing laundered pajamas by Charles Manson, the cult leader that, the cult killed lots of people in the 60s and 70s, right? But they're clean. They're nice clean pajamas, right? All right. Or pick up a nickel off of the ground. Now, is it nice, a clean floor? Is it a dirty floor? Doesn't matter.
No, outside
right, on the dirty ground. Yeah.
And put it in your mouth.
And put it in my mouth. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does this prove? So if I'm wearing the pajamas, right?
Then you're probably not, if you're willing to wear the pajamas, then you're probably not willing to give into magical thinking. Eric Oliver.
Magical thinking.
Yeah, magical thinking.
Like unicorns and fairies and yes.
Yeah, it's one thing to kind of do that as a kid, but as we grow up, we know that unicorns and fairies don't actually exist, and there is no actual magic power that Charles Manson put into his pajamas that will transfer to you when you put them on, even after they've been laundered. So, but the thing is that conspiracy theorists are much more likely to say, "Oh my gosh, I would rather pick up a nickel off the ground and put it in my mouth."
Okay. I'm still getting over the fact that there's no such things as unicorns and fairies, but I guess I'll just go on.
You can do it. Hang in there.
But yeah, that's an interesting facet, right? Where we're looking at, the way that we attribute causality, because that's a lot of what this is looking. We are causal explanation, or people that want causes for things. We want to explain things because there's a cause and an effect. And so with that, the way that cause and effect happens can be, sometimes magical or sometimes based in reality. So,
okay, well, let's talk about some of the psychological aspects of this, right?
Right.
What are the things that contribute to this?
So as humans, we're pattern seeking, right? There's this concept of pareidolia, right? And I know I just mispronounced that, but pareidolia is this tendency for our brain to impose patterns on random data, such as an image of an inkblot or of a cloud. And so we're searching for those patterns, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So if we are, in the case of the Iowa caucuses, we're probably going to be saying, well, what malevolent forces would want something bad to happen? Oh, we're going to start to fill in the blanks with an irrational response before we even understand what actually happened.
Which you get it, which is the next piece, which is this fundamental attribution error, which is this idea that we project on others, other people's behavior, an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. So what that means is that, if somebody does something bad, we attribute it to their own personality, their internal workings, versus if we end up, like if we're speeding down the highway, it's because of an external event. It's not because I'm a speeder and I'm a bad person and putting people's lives at risk. I am going fast because I need to get, to this appointment or other external factors. And we don't necessarily do that for others. So in this pattern recognition component, tied with this fundamental attribution error, we're finding patterns and we're attributing it to a nefarious kind of rationale. So in the Iowa caucus, there's a delay. There's a longer delay. There's another delay. There's this pattern of delays. And why is that delay happening? Going back to this, what's the reason? We're trying to put a reason in there. Now the fundamental attribution error is going because they're trying to do something negative with the results, and the results aren't showing up like whatever the people in power are trying to have. So that aspect.
Absolutely. And that also connects us to this sense that we like to have a feeling of control. Right. We like to believe that we are in control to some degree because our control will help keep us safe.
Right.
And so the explanations that we create around this chaos or confusion are intended to help keep us safe and keep us feeling safe. Right. At least in some cases.
And again, going back to the personality aspects of this, right? People who are more anxious, are more alienated and socially isolated, are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. So, and that we turn. So there's been studies that show that people are likely to turn to conspiracy theories when they're anxious, or that, conspiracy belief is strongly related to a lack of social-political control or a lack of psychological empowerment, right? So when we get those pieces together and combine that with this pattern recognition, the fundamental attribution error, and then tying in, I think one of the biggest reasons we have conspiracy theories is motivated reasoning.
Oh, bing, bing, bing. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when you think about motivated reasoning, it's going again back to resulting with Annie Duke, I have this, I have an outcome that I want, and the outcome isn't the actual outcome isn't what I thought it would be. Now I have to justify that. So there's a motivated reasoning. So I'm looking for things to attribute the cause of that to. And again, going back to the Iowa caucuses, right? My candidate didn't win.
Right.
And it's not because of, the candidate was bad or wrong or doesn't, jive with the populace. It's because somebody's messing with the results in the end.
So if I'm in the Sanders or Buttigieg camp, I'm more likely to dismiss any kind of conspiracy theories. But if I'm in the Biden camp, I might be more willing to say, there might have been some foul play here.
Right. So scholars have suggested that conspiracy theories valorize the self or the in-group by saying that the blame for the negative outcome can be attributed to others. So it's this aspect of upholding our own positive self-image, the positive self-image of the group, and saying, yep, we're competent, we're good. It's all these other factors out there that are driving these bad results. So that happens.
And
right?
all that said, by the way, there are actual cover-ups. I think we should take a minute to just acknowledge that actual cover-ups do happen.
They do. And actually that lends itself into, again, people saying, believing these what can be pretty outlandish conspiracy theories because they can point back to, there were actual cover-ups. I mean, you look at Snowden, you look at some of the other, whistleblower things that have come out. There have been cover-ups, and oftentimes by the government, oftentimes by people in power trying to maintain that power, and they have the power to do it. Roswell, right? I mean, it was
the UFO sightings and
right. So Roswell had this conspiracy theory around a UFO crash there back in the late 1940s, and that's the conspiracy theory that came up. When the reality, there was a cover up. The cover up was actually there was a program about a U.S. program to kind of spy on Russian nuclear activity. And they covered that crash up and made up some, weather balloon story. And that was then debunked. And so now you're saying, well, see, that was debunked and there was an actual cover up. That could happen here.
And with the Iowa caucuses, there is, there's so much desire to save face. That I don't think that anyone in the Democratic Party wants to look like they're screwing up right now. So I think that the motivations of the individuals who are involved in all of this are really well intended, and that the likelihood of something nefarious coming in and getting under their skin and them not saying, oh my gosh, it actually happened because of some other outside force, and just coming clean with that in the news, I think is really rare. I think the more likely explanation is that this was ineptitude.
It is, but now if you are a conspiracy theory believer, right? You tend to have what's called a closed belief system. And that closed belief system is that you think that all actions and outcomes are deliberate and intended. So this is the part where, hey, your refutation, the evidence that you give me to refute my conspiracy belief is actually part of the conspiracy. So, all evidence, any evidence that could prove the conspiracy to be wrong or false becomes part of the bigger conspiracy. And so you have this built-in, element that says it doesn't matter what you show me because you're just part of the conspiracy itself.
Yeah, this tends to make conspiracy theorists really good at arguing their points because they're not really interested in arguing the truth or discovering the truth. They're just interested in persuading you that they've got a solid argument.
Right. Yeah. They're not after the truth. They're just after making sure that they're saving face. Yeah. All right. So with that, Tim, how do we inoculate ourselves against, falsely believing in these conspiracy theories? What are some things that we can do?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is to get beyond the headline. Right, get beyond just the general statement and look at the research. Look at how the research was done. How was it reported? Look at the credibility of sources. Those kinds of things. I think you got to start with getting beyond just the splash of the clickbait.
Right, and then I think that there's a adding on to that. there's this aspect of saying, all right, so for the conspiracy theory to have worked, what would have been viable to make it work? So for instance, when you think about the moon landing was faked, well, how many NASA employees had to be in on the conspiracy theory?
Right.
If you think about, even the Iowa caucus piece, right? So what had to go into it? And wow, is that more believable than, maybe ineptitude or just, something being messed up? So exactly. I think that is a big piece. And I think there's also this aspect of giving people control, right? So from a way to inoculate ourselves is this ability to, it's been shown that hey, when feeling a more control, you are less likely to believe. So if there's anything we can do to give a sense of control to yourself or to others, that will help in inoculating. It's not a cure-all. We're all susceptible, but it will help in making sure that we're not falling false prey.
In the case of the Iowa caucuses, transparency would go a long way at helping people feel like, oh, I can see the process, I can see what happened, and that can give us more of a sense of, oh, people were acting with integrity. They tried, but they were just inept or maybe stupid.
Right, which goes to Hanlon's razor, right? There's a statement, right, that says, never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity or ineptitude.
God love Robert Hanlon. Wow.
I mean, it is a wonderful statement that I use often. And to think about this, right? There is probably ineptitude or stupidity involved in almost all of, many of these cases, right?
Yes.
And just in our everyday life, if something bad happens to us, let's not fall to the fundamental attribution error. Let's apply Hanlon's razor. And if it's adequately explained by, stupidity or ineptitude, probably the more likely case.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's wrap this up. So to recap, there are a number of scientific reasons that people believe conspiracy theories. We are pattern-seeking creatures. We don't like uncertainty, and we want to fill it and have a feeling of control or of certainty. This also plays into our motivated reasoning. We don't like the results, so there needs to be a nefarious reason that it happened, right? We commit the fundamental attribution error about people's intent, and we put that nefarious reason on them. So going negative is more easy for humans than going positive in most instances. So we will hear a twig snap and it's the saber-toothed tiger as opposed to our friend just sneaking up on us. And so that's a part of our in our DNA and how we respond. There are certain personality traits that are more likely to buy into conspiracy theories because of their need for certainty and distrust of authority. And conspiracy theories persist because we have a closed belief system where we can attribute any evidence against that belief as part of the conspiracy itself.
So we can help overcome our susceptibility to conspiracy theories by looking past the headlines and looking at the research to make sure that it stands up to scrutiny. If we can provide ourselves or others a greater feeling of control, that helps inoculate us against these far-fetched ideas. And finally, just remember Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity or ineptitude.
Great. So that wraps up this episode of Weekly Grooves. And since we're still new, this is our 4th episode, we need to get the word out. So please share this with a friend, post about it on social media, link to it if you can. And of course, we'd very much appreciate a quick review if you like. Also, if you want to give us feedback directly, you can reach out to us on Twitter. Tim can be reached at @THoulihan, and I can be reached at What Motivates. We would love to hear from you. So go out and have a great week.